Hi, I'm Tane.
And I'm Aid, and this is Altar Call, a Married at First Sight podcast.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode, season 17, episode 10. Hi, Aid. How are you?
I am great. How are you?
I'm good. Trying to get ready for my trip to Texas, and I'm nowhere ready. Yay, me.
I'm looking forward to seeing you. So I'm excited about your trip to Texas.
Same here. Okay. I think we should just dive into this week's episode. What housekeeping do we want to share with the people this week?
Sister Wives is up on our Patreon. Go subscribe if you'd like to hear our thoughts on the end of this season. There will be no after party on Patreon this week. And to celebrate the holiday, we will be off next week, but we will give you the Christmas present of part 2 of our interview with Dr. Pepper and Dr. Jessica. I can't believe it. We did it in February. But honestly, everything they said still applies. So part 1 was on our regular feed, part 2 is on our Patreon. So we're just going to share part 2 with all of you. Happy holidays.
Yay. And even though there's no after party, we will be sharing the important bits on this episode. And there were a lot of. Listen, guys, we've been whining about how no camera, it was worth the damn wait. It was just like, what? And
What?
the fact that they had Lauren there, that was, you know, per. Oh my God, perfection. I'm so glad that they had the right people right there. But so yeah, we'll be sprinkling that in the episode. So never fear, never fear.
All right, Dane. Before we get to that, what is going on with our MAFS people?
Okay, Jose from the Houston season, he got new property. If you watch the season, you know his pride and joy, besides being debt free and a high credit score, was that he has property everywhere. He has property number 4 that he said. So congratulations to him, honestly, because with the market right now, like congrats to him. Um, Team Up sent or brought this to my attention. I did not see this, but went back and looked at it. Alexis and Justin are doing something together. Looks like it's a whether a podcast or a YouTube thing, I don't know. But it's called X Cam. Episode 1 is up. And they're going to be spilling secrets, I guess, about their time on maps and the things we didn't know about. And I'm like, oh, that makes sense why he's just been liking her stuff. And I'm sure it's probably going to be about like their growth and how they got to this place that they are. But in the comments, someone was like, oh, I'm so glad you guys are here. I'm rooting for you. And Alexis is like, serious question, why? Like, I mean, I get where she's coming from, like especially because she said serious question or genuine question, like what was it about us that you were rooting for or anything. But I'm just like, what?
That's a fair question, but I'm like, if you were rooting for them, I'm like, do you mean the project that they're launching or the relationship? And I guess Alexis took it to mean the relationship.
No, they meant the relationship. They said I was rooting for you guys to make it during your season, blah blah blah. And she's like, why? So
That's a legitimate question. That is a legitimate question. Why would you be rooting for the mess that we were?
oh man, she had to ask me anything, and I think someone was asking like, "Did you feel you had to be more masculine?" She's like, "No, I don't believe in those masculine, feminine, whatever." But we weren't able to be ourselves in the relationship. Anyways, Rachel from Houston, Jose's ex-wife, is doing a girls' summer trip. For those who follow, Rachel does travel a lot, so I guess she's trying to turn that into. I couldn't tell if it's like a business. I wouldn't assume that she's doing it for free, but just trying to get a summer trip together for 2024 and asking people to sign up. Virginia, I want to say turned 30 and had a birthday, and all the ladies showed up, the Atlanta ladies, except Haley because of work. And people honestly are rude. Someone asked Claire why she looked bloated. And I'm like, I just don't even understand. Like, you see things on there, people you have no idea, and you take the time out to type out and ask them rude questions? How does that add to your life?
GTFO.
I think I'm sure I must have said it, but I don't remember. But I think the Boston season just dropped on Netflix or something. I don't know. But Lindsay had to ask me anything, said that she's gotten good feedback since the show was on Netflix. And someone asked her if she would do it again. And she's like, yeah, no. And then yeah, when she continued about if she would do it again, our girl Jen from the Wise and Wine podcast, she did an interview with Lindsay. Check it out. Got a shout out because she said I did an interview with her, and I said that since I love myself so much, I wouldn't do it again. But everything she went through got her to where she is, being a director, being in the Bay Area, being with a man that she wants. She was also asked who she's close to on the season, and she said her first answer was people behind the camera.
Fair enough.
And she said she does talk to Katina every now and then because when they talk, it's usually about growth and all that. And then I started wondering what happened to her and Olajuwon. That's who she was close to. So I'm very surprised it's Katina that she's close to. So my takeaway from the whole thing is Lindsay is gonna be Lindsay. She just kept saying how she's a good person. People who know her know she's genuine. She gives a lot of this and that, and I'm not. I'm just. Did you not learn anything? Like everything you did was right. I don't know. I'm just. It's very interesting.
She's a bit delusional because you cannot pay me enough money to believe that the feedback she has gotten since her season has been on Netflix has been positive. That's a lie.
I mean, this earlier this week, I think I was pondering this thought. I'm like, what is the difference between self confidence and delusion? I mean, you tell yourself whatever you want to tell yourself, and if you believe it, it is what it is. That is your reality. So she has made her own reality, and good for her in that, I guess.
I mean, the thing is, if I was talking to Lindsay, I'd be like, "Oh, ignore all the negative people; they're not useful," and that is true. But the way she behaved on her season does not engender positive feedback or negative feedback that is wrong. It's right.
I mean, she was even like the thing she said about Mike Mark the Shark or whatever. She's like, I was venting that anyone who says they haven't talked shit about anybody is a liar. So I didn't do anything. I'm just like, wow, that is something.
If she
And the
thinks the only thing
manipulation.
she did was that venting in the bathroom, then what about everything else?
Exactly. And then she was talking about the manipulation and the reality show, and I'm like, and the people you talk to are the people behind the camera? Okay. But so that's all I got, guys. All right, guys, we are going to pay some bills and come back with this episode.
This holiday season, you might be looking for nutritious, flavorful meals to fuel you on jam packed days. Factor, America's #1 ready to eat meal delivery service, can help you eat well for breakfast, lunch, and dinner with chef prepared, dietitian approved, ready to eat meals. You'll save time and stay on track with your healthy lifestyle while tackling all your holiday to dos.
Factor gives you calorie conscious options that don't skimp on flavor. If you need an extra boost to support your wellness goals and feel your best during the holidays, try the Protein Plus meals with 30 grams of protein or more per serving. The spinach and chicken mushroom was delish. It's not just dinners. You can choose from quick breakfast items, lunch to go, grab and go snacks, and ready to drink cold pressed juices, shakes, and smoothies. Your meals are delivered straight to your door. They'll be ready in just 2 minutes, no prep and no mess. Head to factormeals.com/AutoCallMass50 and use code AutoCallMass50 to get 50% off. That's code AutoCallMass50 at factormeals.com/AutoCallMass50 to get 50% off.
Tane, I thought this episode was funny. I don't know if it intended to be funny, but there were moments where I just laughed.
I didn't laugh, but I was already talking about how, yeah, I think one of the couples that said we hit a wall, and I'm like, yeah, this season has hit a wall and it's episode 10. But I ate my words. I just needed time and it picked right back up, and I was entertained by the episode.
I was. People didn't mean to be funny, but sometimes they were.
I'm looking forward to hearing all the things you found funny.
We start off with Claire and Cameron and passive aggressiveness, because this is their brand. This is their bread and butter. This is how they plan to move through this relationship. This time it's about the thermostat. They're fake waking up because we know that they really didn't just wake up. Claire
Mhm.
says, "Oh, I was so hot." Cameron says, "The thermostat is right over there." She says, "Didn't I say 5 times?" This man didn't even let her finish. He cut her off. And then she's like, "I wanted the window open." And she was roasting. He says, "You did ask me once about the." I was like, for the love of God.
And
Why?
you have to imagine that this is also just this is how the episode started. Like we didn't even get to put our snacks down, get cozy on that. They just went right into it, and it's like, oh god, we were not ready.
They decide to, Cameron's like, "Let's talk about last night. You know, where I told your friend that my father is, really ill and I can't tell him that we're married." So he's like, he didn't realize that he hadn't communicated that clearly. Claire was like, "It was very strange the way it was brought up." He's like, "I don't know, Amy, but you were diving into a lot." Anyway, what Cameron's explanation is that his dad has been sick for many years. It's not that it isn't a big deal, but it's not considered something newsworthy. So he's already gone through the stages. It's not a recent thing. It's just sort of a stasis. It's a state, like a steady state
Mhm.
situation.
Mhm.
So maybe that's why he thought he had told her, but she didn't understand the gravity. And she said last night was the first time she'd heard about his dad.
Yeah. I was just like on his case because the way he was so blasé about it, understood that he's been living with it for a long time, but also you know that you married a stranger. Like it's still a big thing to share with someone. And everything just felt so vague. It's like, what are you really trying to say? Because he was like, he's a survivor. I'm like, survivor of what? But I think we get our answers from After Party because at first I thought he was going to be vague, but Keisha just kind of. I just want to say that, I've been hard on Keisha, but I think Keisha did the damn thing on After Party this episode and asked the questions that should be asked. And we find out that his dad basically has a collapsed lung. Is that right?
He said that his father's lungs collapsed when his parents got divorced. And I thank the good Lord when Keisha was like, "So when did that happen?" And he actually explained a whole lot before we got to when did that happen. His parents divorced when he was 13. And he says that his father's lungs collapsed from the emotional strain of the divorce, it sounds like. And
Mm-hmm.
he's been in chronic bad health since then. And he also said that he told Claire, "My dad can't get on a plane." But I feel like he didn't provide anything further than that. So she didn't know, like, oh, he'll never be able to get on a plane. He's chronically ill. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he did say, to his credit, that he probably didn't explain that well, and Claire just probably thought it was a temporary thing, which again is still a big thing. Like if your dad is bedridden, that's still a big thing that you should be clear about. Again, I know he's been living with it for years, but you kind of still have to be cognizant of the fact that this person you just married who did not know anything about you does not know. But he also did say that he was surprised by her surprise. But I don't know. It's Claire and Cameron. Who knows?
So moving on to Brennan and Emily. He says he's gonna make bacon, egg, and toast. He forgot butter, whatever. She apologizes again for her friends. I was mad. Girl, stop apologizing. They just talk about how it was supposed to be a fun night, didn't quite turn out that way. First, he says he thinks he could have done things differently and handled it better. He didn't want to come off defensive. But then he says he doesn't apologize for that because he was obviously heated in the moment. He has to stand up for himself. She tells him that she wanted him to know that she'll always take his side. I think that's a part of marriage, but that's not really how it works. If your partner's wrong, maybe you take their side in public and later on you tell them why they're wrong, but you can't just
Mm-hmm.
universally. That's not in the marriage vows. "I'll always be on your side even when you're being an asshole." I don't think that should be part of it. Um, she really is into the apologizing, like, "I don't want you to think less of me because of my friends." And he says he doesn't think less of her. He's treating it like a one-off night with pressure that felt a little off. Forgive and forget. In this scene, I noticed that Emily's blush is really bothering me, and for the rest of the episode, all I could stare at was her blush because I think she's putting it on wrong. So next up is Austin and Becca. They're playing a game, cribbage. I think I've heard of cribbage. I don't know how to play it. But apparently there's a pegging part. So Becca tries to throw some sexual jokes in there. In the interview, she says that she's looking to create sexual tension in this non sexual game, but she knows she needs to be patient. But she's starting to feel worried that they're not separating from friendship to move into something else.
It's funny, she said that just as I was thinking, like, wow, like, we really have no content that we have to watch these people play a game and laugh like fourth graders every time they said pegging. And she's like, well, how does this separate us from being a friendship? And I was like, oh, good question. Also, it looks like Becca got a refresh on her pink hair. Her hair was the pink was pinking. And then also because of what you said, where you said you hope is not in honor of some, like they're gonna come out with like someone has cancer or whatever and stuff. I'm like, I hope after party pink is not in her honor, because I just saw the pink hair and I'm just like, oh, I hope not. But also, Dr. Pia has decided pink is her signature color too, because she wore that for the visits, and I noticed she's wearing that for decision day, and I can't remember what she wore before. But I'm like, what does this pink mean? It's really truly driving me crazy.
I figure either it'll all be revealed or it won't be. But I love the idea of the girls getting together and being like, this is our theme for After Party for the whole season. We're not breaking.
Good for them.
Back to Claire and Cameron and passive aggressiveness. Because they have nothing to say, they're sitting there chewing their food. And Cameron says the sounds of mastication. I love it when I can pinpoint the exact time I learned what a word means. I learned mastication from, oh gosh, I can't believe I forgot this. Oh my God. What's the Sandra Bullock Miss America movie?
Miss Congeniality.
Thank you. That is where I learned the word mastication, and I hope all of you who love that movie remember exactly the part where the word is said. So of course, Cameron.
What just happened right now? What?
There's one person out there who knows exactly what I'm talking about.
Okay.
So Cameron says the sounds of mastication, and then he tells Claire it means chewing because she didn't watch Miss Congeniality. And Claire says, "Well, you could have just said chewing." I'm like, "Why do you people hate each other so much?" He says he wanted to use a big word. She's like, "You tend to do that." He's like, "I should do it more often because people would know how smart I really am." And it's just, they're laughing, but there's always undertones when they're laughing.
Hmm.
And Cam is feeling the undertones too, because in an interview he says, when Claire expresses feeling of cascading annoyances, I've never heard this term. Cascading annoyances. It needs to be on a t-shirt. He says he wants to feel wanted, and her body language and actions say she doesn't want me.
He's been saying what we've been saying for weeks.
So Cam tries to talk to Claire about this. I feel like we are stuck. We're at an impasse. She tries to put a little lipstick on this pig and says that they're both trying really hard. They've hit a wall. There's zero romance. I do find it interesting that Claire is like, oh, there's no one to blame.
She does that a lot this episode. She just tries to project her feelings onto him. I think you'd say the same thing too. I think you would agree. I'm like, girl, just say what you got to say on your own.
Cam is like, it's easy to say the lack of romance and that it will come in time. But when we're talking about turn ons, has he been doing anything to turn her on, basically? This woman says, yeah, yeah, yeah. You know what that means? No. Am I the only person who finds this funny? I think I'm the only one.
Yes.
And then she starts talking about how he does this thing where he checks in with her and she actually touches him. Like, when you do that, like, that's a turn on to me. You ask me how I'm feeling. Okay, that's good. So then he flips it. He's like, okay, well, then what's a turn off? She's like, it took a second, just a beat too long. And she says no. But she's not romantically ready to engage sexually. It doesn't feel naturally, like, to kiss. She's like, yeah, for the both of us, right? He's like, no, no. I do want to kiss you. And she's like, "Oh, that's news to me."
It's funny that she's getting on him for how he talks, but again, who says, I'm not romantically ready to engage in behavior that is sexual? Are we AIs? Like, why can't you just be direct? It just really drives me nuts that Claire doesn't communicate directly.
But is Claire just like Brennan, which we'll get to him later, but where she just doesn't want to say like I'm not attracted to you.
She is, but I don't know why when the person is like asking and then everything else that you do indicates that. Like someone literally, I mean, further down the line gave you an out and you rejected it. Like I don't it's weird.
I do think maybe I'm just giving Claire too much benefit of the doubt. Sometimes people don't want to quit on the show because they're not Orions. They're not like, I'm done. What if something, you put a lot into this, and I still think that even though their mind might be checked out, their body is still like, let me just grit my teeth and keep on trying. Um,
I think she can say that too.
so
It's not there, but I think I'll be doing myself a disservice if I don't see this through and see what could come of it. But yeah.
that's an option. She's not taking it. So then Cameron asks, is there a 0.1% chance of this working out? She very quickly says no. His face falls. She's like, no, there's more than that. And he says that they have to stick through it and make the romance work. Okay.
What? 0.2?
She's like, I got a 1% at least. Emily and Brennan go to Pilates reformer class. Pilates reformer is so bad that I have invented memories of trying it, but I never have tried it. I never will try it because it's terrible. Have you ever done reformer?
No, I haven't.
So yeah, they go, they work out. She says they had a good day hanging out. Apparently, they spent the whole day together for the first time. It sounds like.
She's being breadcrumbed at this point. You're so excited that you spent the whole day with your husband, 18 days into the marriage.
So everybody meets up. Um, there's a potluck. Cameron talks about how if they all brought enough food for 8 people, there'd be food for. I think he said 38, but I think the correct number is
He said 36.
okay. That's wrong, right? It's 32.
I did not think that hard on it. I just took it and moved on.
Math is not my strong suit, but never mind. There's a potluck. Lauren and Orion are the last to arrive. Claire says she's been talking to Lauren and she's probably coming. She asked the guys if they've talked to Orion. Like, whatever happened to Lauren and Orion is in the group chat, but we're all gonna fake like no one knows.
That was
Um,
annoying. And they're like, have they moved in? Have they? I'm like, wait, are we really? This happened like how long ago? Well, I don't know what the timeline is, but it felt like a long time ago.
Lauren comes in with a full charcuterie board. It looks real nice. Someone asks if they moved in. Like we just discussed, they know the answer. She says they never moved in. Orion comes in with dessert. He does a very weird touch of Lauren. Not a hug, not a pat. I don't know what that was.
It was a tap. It was a it was a hello tap. Hello, how are you?
Orion is like, I brought dessert. My friends own a bakery. They flashed to the dessert. There's no sticker. There's no nothing. He didn't get any advertising for his friend's bakery out of this. Lauren asks about everybody's housewarmings. Brennan says he got ambushed by Emily's friends. Okay. They've been going through bumps, no romantic bond yet. He's trying to work through it. The honeymoon was good, but reality changed. Lauren is like, you're still in it. That's very commendable. Very commendable. If that's not subtweeting.
Rat-a-tat-tat-tat-tat. Rat-a-tat-tat-tat. The bullets were hitting.
Ah, Brennan says, we're trying. Lauren says, yeah, it's easy to leave when stuff gets hard.
As she scooted her way into the couch any further away from Orion, I was like, Lauren, you've hit the end. There's nowhere else to go.
Okay, Claire in an interview says that she's surprised to hear basically how badly things are going for people because she assumed everybody else was happy. But yeah, that's not the case. Orion is like, yeah, we haven't talked since the honeymoon, but Lauren and I have decided to get a divorce. Lauren says I, as in you, because I didn't decide that. Who says this is not comedy? Emily says, when did this happen? Lauren says, you can speak to it since it happened so many times. Orion says, yeah, coming back from the honeymoon. I will say Orion is not really defending here. Like, whatever Lauren says, he's just rolling with it. So he's
Yeah.
like, we came back from the honeymoon. We talked to Dr. Pia. After that, I was like, I really, really want a divorce. Brennan asked Lauren if she thinks Orion gave this a chance, and she said they had a raised disagreement. Then she corrected herself and she said, no, I made a very insensitive joke day two of the honeymoon. And then she lists all of Orion's sins that she was called a failure in the marriage, he slut shamed her. I was so happy that she brought up that he slut shamed her and she ended up apologizing to him because
Mhm.
I was very bothered about that when it happened. She said, you had me apologize and you didn't apologize. Orion says he's not changing what he's saying, and she says, you change every moment. Lauren calls him a gaslighter. It's just a little bit of an overused word. But I can
I
see where she finds interactions with Orion frustrating.
Yeah, I guess it's frustrating. Like there's a difference. Like I think Orion really truly believes his truth and doesn't realize that he's inconsistent. So I don't know that the gaslighting applies to him, but I think the appropriate word is frustrating because he is inconsistent. He just says one thing and does another,
And changes his mind. He
and
changes his
changes his mind.
mind.
Yeah. Hmm. But I think the funny part, I guess this is one of the comedic things. I don't know if this is part of what you found funny, but Lauren and Orion argue like no one else is in the room. And they do this continuously, and everybody else is just like, should we be here? And it's so vague because at this point, I still don't know if people besides Claire know what her racially insensitive joke is. And no one's going to be like, so what exactly was it? I do feel like other casts, like other seasons, Elijah would have been like, what the hell did you say? Or somebody would have been like, Lindsay would have been like, can you just share? If not, don't talk about it. Like, I just think this cast is really respectful and polite, and they just sit there and smile and be like, this is bad. But it's always so funny when they do that. But I think this is also the reason why Orion asked for a divorce, because when they get into a divorce, Lauren is very clear and stern and very whatever about what she's saying, and little boy Orion cannot deal with that. And that's what he's uncomfortable with, and I think that's why he asked for a divorce. Like I can't constantly be checked or put in my place or being told, God forbid, to be accountable for the things that you did.
And I will say, just to make sure it's like very clear, the reason, to, at least to me, the reason he's being checked is because he is so inconsistent.
Yeah. Oh, I am on Lauren's side. Like, make no mistake. Like, Lauren is right to check him. Like, you can't have a conversation where you're saying different things every 4 to 6 minutes. It's not fair to the other person. So yeah.
Emily asks, did you give up too fast? And Lauren says she didn't give up because she didn't, as in Orion did. Orion says he feels like he tried, but it was small steps back with each argument. And then Orion's like, see how easy it is for us to start going back and forth? There's a disconnect in our communication. And he basically repeats that. Oh, there was a disconnect on the honeymoon, disconnect, communication. Got it.
Is this where she says because we don't communicate?
Yes. Cameron says, you're not alone. It's been hard for Claire and I. There are big things chemistry, romance, raising kids, religion. I'd like to point out here that during after party, and I really appreciate Cameron saying this during after party because it rings very true. He's like, yeah, we would talk about all these problems. Those were not the problems. I think those were just easy things to talk about instead of talking about the real problem. So this raising kids religion thing, he's like, it wasn't that big of a deal. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Um, but Cam, once again, he's doing the whole she's the best thing ever. He's head over heels with how great she is. She's like, don't make me cry. Brennan says, don't make me cry. I haven't cried since the second grade. Later on, the same man will be upset someone told him to go to therapy. Um,
Mm-hmm. Before they had their talk later in the episode or whatever, I had written down Cameron's speech felt like a farewell. Because he was like, she's the best person that I've ever dated and blah, blah. And I was like, oh, is this a goodbye. But also, I'm like, when Cameron started with Lauren, you're not alone. I'm like, how is this speech making Lauren feel better when you're praising your wife and saying you're trying? Like, that doesn't help her. Her husband said, sayonara, bye.
I think he wants her to know that she's miserable in singledom, but he's equally miserable in marriage. Brennan asked Becca and Austin how they are doing. This is where you know producers. Brennan, I don't see Brennan asking Becca and Austin how they're doing on his own.
Mhm.
Austin says the conversation is stressful. The religion and the intimacy speed are sort of their big issues, and he needs time to work through certain things and
Like
figure out.
what? What are these things? Like, point, I am terrified of Austin because I feel like he's hiding something really big.
I think Austin returned to church like 6 months ago, and I'm being facetious, but
Oh, I
I,
was like, where did we get
I,
this from?
I I just think that he's downplaying the importance of religion because he really likes Becca. And I think in his own mind, which is, I don't know if it's wrong, he's probably thinking to himself, I don't know how important these things are to me, but I know that they're more important than perhaps I thought they were.
Why hasn't anyone checked us? Someone hit us with the matchmaking special. Was religion mentioned for Austin, Becca, Cameron, Claire? Like, where was their stance on that? I want to know.
Austin says that Becca's support is helpful and meaningful. Becca is basically like, I'm so sad that all my friends are so sad. I'm sure this was a miserable conversation.
Mm, it was a downer. Like, at some point, they were all crying.
Yes.
So that was sad. I was like, season 17, damn.
Lauren in an interview basically says the same things. Like, I'm glad everybody's still together, but everybody's just, they're being challenged. And then Lauren says that she's excited to continue on her with her life and knows she tries her best. And then she starts crying, then she starts sobbing, then she can't even stand up. I was like, someone please go give her a hug. Some producer appears out to do exactly what I instructed. And I really felt like they spent a lot, like, she'd clearly gone to a place where she probably thought she wasn't on camera, and they did some wide angle of Lauren crying some more. That wasn't nice.
Get the shot. I just again, sorry to go back to Brent Austin. He said the thing about after he said they need to work through certain things, that he's just trying to work through things before they get to the point of the things that would tear them apart. That's why I'm just like, again. But do you think that's still the religion thing?
It's the
Because
religion thing or it's something else. What was the other thing? Religion and
oh, I just think it's something that
sex.
hasn't been. No, I don't think that. No, it just really sounds ominous. Like, if it was just that, I wouldn't be so worried. I think it's, to me, that's why I'm like, what is the thing? It's not the first time he said it. During the honeymoon, he was like, "Oh, before we get to the big stuff that we have to tackle," and then now he says like the things that would. I was like, "What is that thing that would tear them apart? Why would sex tear them apart? If you want to go slow, she's respecting it, and then eventually you're gonna have sex. If it's just you want to build an emotional connection, it's not like, oh, we're never gonna have sex. So I don't know, tearing you apart because of that sounds so dramatic.
That's why I'm like, maybe it's the religion.
I don't know, but that's just really whatever. But yeah, I think an after party, Lauren did mention that she doesn't think that Orion recognizes what he did. And Cameron was so insightful. He's like, well, that happens when someone who has never had to recognize that they're hurting someone. So it's just easier to put the blame on somebody else and move on. And Keisha was like, Keisha was so, it's her first time meeting Cameron. And she's like, wow, that's so insightful. And Keisha did something that was good. Brennan is such a terrible guest. He just sits there, stone faced. But she kept throwing questions at him. Brennan, what do you think? Brennan, what do you think? So she's like, Brennan, what do you think? And he's like, the experience is a learning experience for everyone. So, all of that stuff. But yeah.
I like Cameron. I'm trying to figure out if I'm gonna like him by the end of the season, but I think I feel bad for him, and I just think that he is really, I don't know, in tune with things.
Yeah, because he's been right on the read. And remember last week we were going like, yes, Cameron is doing certain things, but is Cameron just reacting to the body language that he's getting? I also liked Cameron and I really liked his presence at after party, but I wasn't there. And this whole he said she said thing, and I don't know these people, but Lauren is not a liar. But also Lauren is getting information from Claire. But I also don't think Claire would lie. So I'm just like, how can two people have such wildly different interpretation of things that it's spinning my head and I don't know who's telling the truth or not?
I think the other interesting thing is that I think we're in agreement that Cameron is attracted to Claire. Or he's
Yeah,
doing a really good job of faking being attracted to her.
yeah.
We're going to take a break and we'll be back. So we come back to postmortems. Cameron and Claire, which Claire's outfit was I'm just going to say it was ugly.
Okay.
It wasn't, okay, it wasn't terrible, but I was like, this is a choice. I don't get it. But they sit down and they agree that that was draining on many levels. Claire didn't realize that where the other couples were at. She thought that they were the only two down in the dumps, but they're not the only ones. I don't know why she said this. Um, Cameron says we have potentially insurmountable problems, but at least we're talking about it. And maybe I like Cameron because he expressed something that I've expressed for weeks. He's like, Austin and Becca are just not talking about things because they're scared. It seems unhealthy, but I'm not going to tell anybody how to live their lives. That's what Cameron said.
Yeah. I mean, but that's everybody knows that they're not talking about stuff, and he even Austin has said it again. They're not talking about stuff because he doesn't want them to be torn apart. So it's common knowledge. He's just verbalizing it, but they're just finding out about it, I guess.
I think the group they talked about it a little in the honeymoon, but maybe this is the first time they've met up since they got back. So he's
Yeah,
like,
because
"Wow,
they
these two are still not talking about stuff."
yeah they said they were gonna wait till after the honeymoon, but it's been after the honeymoon, and we are still here.
So then, I have realized that one of my favorite genres of this show is couples talking about other couples. So Claire and Cameron continue. Next up, they're like, Brennan and Emily, something's up. Cameron says they're not being specific enough about the issues. And Claire's like, I don't think they're being honest. I did notice, and I noticed this earlier, that Claire has the initials JRK tattooed on her arm, and I'm sure that's a tattoo for her brother.
Her brother. Mhm.
Claire says that they're good at being honest, and and she means her and Cameron, and that as long as they continue for the rest of their lives, that's beneficial. Cameron says, in the spirit of being honest, he's been inspired to it gets very wordy. And basically he said, it sounded to me like he said, Orion cut this shit off early, maybe we should too. That's my summary. He said a lot of things. It was a bit word salady, but that was his thesis.
Yes, I had written down, what is Cameron saying? And I'm like, what?
And in the interview, he says that he and Claire's biggest hurdles is a lack of physical intimacy and religious views. And he asks Claire if there's an adjustment they need to make, and she says she doesn't know, and then it just ends. So that okay.
I think their postmortem for me, I was like, this is the reverse of what I always bitch about of people comparing themselves. I was like, at this moment, it gives them hope. Like, hey, we're not doing that bad. Everybody else sucks. And I'm just like, on the flip side, if Claire and Cameron are the couples that are doing the best, this is bad. This is real bad.
I've officially given up on the romance part of this show. I'm here for the entertainment because this is not looking
Yeah,
good. Becca
yeah.
and Austin are our best hope, and they're not that great.
And again, save for Jamie and Doug, we've never had a couple come back from non attractiveness, right? Can you
Correct.
think of any? Yeah.
Austin comes to talk to Brennan. Emily goes and talks to Becca. Becca is like, oh, ours is relatively easy. We just have big issues that are going to take time. I'm like, go on with your delusional self. Austin basically says the same thing to Brennan. Things are good. He just doesn't describe to the notion that we have to figure everything out now. Okay. Emily tells Becca that she thought things were fine during the honeymoon. He liked me, he found me attractive, and then something is happening, like a shutting off. And she's asked him, and he won't answer the question about physical attraction. Becca says he is attracted to you. I think that's mighty bold of Becca. But okay.
I think what I learned about Becca this episode is that she likes to have her head in the clouds. And it's a common thing that women do. Someone tells you something and like, oh no, that's not true. He likes you. Even though he just kicked you out of his car and didn't pick up your calls. No, he likes you. I'm like, this man said he's not attracted to you. She's like, no, he is attracted to you. I was like, well, you know.
I would
But I
call it
think she,
putting lipstick on a pig. So Austin tells Brennan, "Oh, you dropped a big bomb. Do you think attraction, like, is this something that you have to have from the beginning, or can it grow?" And Brennan's like, "In the past, it's been immediate. That's not good." And this time, he wants to trust the experts and do things differently. He wants to trust the process. Divorce is not an option. If he could take a pill and have chemistry, he would, but he's got to do it the natural way.
yeah.
Now, this is where Becca does good. She's like, whether he's attracted to you or not, you do know that you are attractive. And that's a good thing to say because A, it's true, and B, after this relationship, Emily's gonna need all the building up that she like possibly could have. So good job on getting started with that, Becca.
Hmm.
And Becca starts crying. I'm sorry, Emily starts crying. I felt so bad for her. She's like, I'm learning that I'm stronger, I'm more in tune with my emotions for not having a relationship. And she said, this is why I didn't date. I wanted someone who's sure of me and sure of themselves, and she doesn't want to give up, and it's hard to hear him talk about romance, whatever that is, and no direct answers. And she doesn't know what to do based on the nothing he's giving her. And Becca says it leaves you in a gray area.
There's something about when Emily cries that really touches my heart because she's just always like upbeat and always trying to make the best of the situation. So when I see her cry, I just in some way feel like I can feel her pain. Like just like, oh my God, like this just feels like hopeless.
It She's not hard. I wouldn't describe her that way, but she has like a persona to her that I don't think that she's. This is not an insult. She's not a Lauren. I don't think she cries a lot. So it's hard to see her cry.
Hmm. Yeah. So then we move once again to Claire and Cameron. Claire tells us in a selfie cam that Dr. Pia is stopping by. Claire is wearing that brand of sweater that I tried and failed to describe last week. I still don't know what it is, but the first thing Dr. Pia notices is that they don't have their rings on. And she says, what's going on with that? Cameron says, well, it's been apparent that our long term viability is not there. And Dr. Pierre is like, oh, that's a bold statement. And it's like, okay, you need to give it time to process. Once again, I'm sure she knew. It seems like the show has sent Dr. Pia to save a couple from the brink. And again, it's like, okay, just I guess this is what they call learning on the job. Just throw her in the deep end. So Cameron says that he wants to try, and they have like a disagreement in religion. Claire mentions her lack of romantic connections. Cameron says like the thing that's so painful is that they are extremely compatible, and he feels heard with her, which is very rare for him in relationships. He says all these nice things about Claire, and Claire is all like, "Oh, that's so nice," and then, um, but then he says something where he says it's time for me to protect Cameron because their future is looking bleak. Claire says something about they're not doing well individually and they have to protect their mental health. And Dr. Pierre was like, okay, I'm just wondering, like, what have you guys tried? Her recommendation is for them to go back to what makes them work individually and get them stabilized because a lot of change has happened and that could deregulate them, and they should take romance, sex, and religion off the table. And my two things were, how do you take that off the table? You're in a marriage, you kind of have to talk about these things, and you tell these people you have to talk about these things. Now take it off. And then I'm like, oh, she means like just for the show, just to keep the show going. We can't lose another couple. So just make it work till the 8 weeks and then you can get divorced. But then the other thing that she said was like, you have to go back to what makes you work individually and get stable. It's never worked. Like they've been, except for the wedding night, maybe it's been back and forth. And if we believe the rumors of the conversations that they were having, which we will get into, that happened the day after the wedding. So I mean, they've been, you know, dead on arrival. So she says, give yourself time to be in the moment and just be fun. Cameron says, I will be disingenuous if I agree to this terms and conditions you just laid at my feet. Like, I would like to sleep on your advice and then tomorrow see how I feel and see if we can do that. And she's like, I appreciate that.
It's
Now,
the most beautiful way I've ever seen a person say hell to the no, to the no, no, no. Like, he said it very respectfully, very kindly, very deferentially, but he's like, I'm not agreeing to all that.
so I had all this whole like diagnosis and stuff. I'm like, especially when he said that it's time to protect Cameron. I'm like, I think Cameron likes Claire, but like her body language, he's just like, I'm not gonna get here and get hurt and get beat up. This girl doesn't like me. Let me just move on. But then after party, like Aid mentioned earlier, he does mention that the raising kids, the religion, that was not a big issue. That his main thing was that he was largely feeling rejected. And then Keisha doing the Lord's work brought up the whole thing that Claire had mentioned, that he said that he wanted someone slender. And then Cameron is like, okay, Claire is my type. I wanted someone that was slender and attractive, and she is both. Which I kind of have to see. Like when Claire says that he says he wanted something slender, I'm looking at Claire like, what do you think you are? like, like I'm so confused. And then he says, listen, guys, till this day, I am not sure why she is not attracted to me. And I'm like, and they let this on air? Because clearly, clearly, they are
Yeah.
not together.
They, and this is a new, I mean not new, but this is a recent seasons of After Party thing
Yeah.
where they're just like, we don't care if we throw spoilers in here.
And I'm like, wow. I'm like, was this a condition? Was he like, listen, unless you guys let me speak my truth, I'm not coming on that show. I'm not acting. I'm saying whatever I want to say. He mentioned also that, he couldn't like do anything physical because off camera, he was told that that was not okay. Lauren said, sorry, I mean, I hear you and I'm confused, but that is not what I heard. What I heard was that Cameron made comments about her body. It was being all vague, and Lauren was like, listen, I tell the truth. What she said, what you said was that you said her butt was too big. And if they had sex, that you would never come. I was like, oh my God.
I'm so
I
glad. I felt stupid because I was listening to talk. They had to do bleeping because this is apparently Lifetime is network television, even with ball gags. Um, and I was like, surely not. But did you read her lips, or are you just like, there's just no other possibility for what he could have said?
there was no possibility. I wasn't even looking at my closed caption. I was just taken aback by what was happening. Like I wasn't ready. I was like, oh my God, like wow. And then the next shocker came into, and he's like, yeah, the other thing about the attraction thing was like, Claire has a type, and they're like, what is her type? He was like, large, athletic. Lauren was like, black.
And if you see the way this is, we know texture in the show, but when that came, I said, honey, what the hell? I texted Tate. I was like, oh my goodness, like what? And then Keisha says, I don't know what's going on right now. I was like, you and all of us. You and all of us, Keisha. Where did this come from?
I don't know why. white people are usually afraid of just describing people as black. Because there was a time, like, I had an IT thing at work and I was trying to figure out how to describe, I didn't know the name of the person. And he's like, who? I was like, listen, the other black guy does not, whatever said name. I was like, it's okay. It's okay to say that because Cameron was like, "Oh, she likes dark, largely athletic." So thank God for Lauren. Lauren was like black, and then Cameron was like, "And we could suppose that that's not true." And Keisha is like, because, and she's like, all her exes are white. I'm
He
like,
whispered it. He
wow.
whispered it
Yeah,
like, oh,
yeah.
oh, all of her exes are white.
And I was like, touche, my dude, touche. Like, where do you go from there? I don't even think Keisha knew how do we, where? What? So, um,
Oh,
yeah, that was great.
I mean, it was a revelation, but there's still confusion because when
Yeah,
Lauren said black, I was like, are you getting that from what Cameron is saying or from what Claire, your friend, has told you?
yeah.
And like Cameron said, where did like she just decided? If you've never dated a black person before, identifiable, how would he come to the conclusion that you like black guys unless you told him?
And he wasn't wrong. Because Lauren does spend, so I don't know. The whole thing is just he said, she said, and it's like, I want to give Claire the benefit of the doubt. Like, why would she lie about it? A little part of me thinks that Cameron may have made one of his off color, ill timed jokes, and Claire has written a whole Tyler Perry movie out of it because that's what she does. Because something about the whole, I kind of believe that Cameron said her butt was too big, but I'm trying to think like, was it a joke or was it one of the things that he said? And she just took it really personally and she never got over it. So Brennan actually kind of confirmed that all he kept telling the guys is that he was attracted to her, which we have seen on our end. So I don't know, but Claire seems surprised every time. Like every time he says something nice, she seems surprised. So I don't know. These two, I don't know what's going on. So Emily and Brennan, the experts are visiting, and sorry, Dr. P is the one who's visiting, not the experts. But they're talking about, the expert visiting. How are you feeling? And I'm like, this has to be Brennan's worst nightmare. And he mentions that he's never done therapy before. And does this count as therapy? Does this count as therapy aid when the
No,
experts come?
no.
It's more like canceling or whatever, right? Not
It's
therapy.
counseling on TV. And when you guys go listen to our interview with Dr. Pepper and Dr. Jessica, they're like, yeah, what we do on the show is not therapy. We're not taking on that responsibility while we're being filmed. And no, no, no.
Okay. So he says he's never done therapy before, and then he wonders what her intentions are. I'm like, Brennan, who hurt you? And Emily just quips, you should ask her. Then Emily, when Dr. Pierre comes in, Emily is already trying to make it nice. She's like, oh, we had a rocky week and we are back on track. And Dr. Pierre's like, oh, so everything's fine now? And she goes, no, that there's a disconnect and they're trying to see how time is going to help with their chemistry. And she brings up him talking about his emotions, that she's heard that that's not his thing. Dr. Pia asks if he agrees and he says yes. She says, but you can identify that you are not feeling romantic feelings, that are there things turning you off. And he's like, hey, let's be mindful of Emily here. It's not easy. I'm here. Which why I'm like, regardless, going back to last week's episode, regardless of what tone those friends came with, Brennan would have come in defensive anyways. Brennan is a naturally distrustful person. He just thinks everyone is out to get him, because I just really think that comment of I wonder what her intentions are was so weird. And I nobody come at me with reality show exploitation and things like that. I just thought it was like a weird comment for him to make.
Yeah, I I'm just checking for patterns. So with Brennan and the defensiveness and the rudeness and the inability to talk like calmly, we've the last 3 times that it's happened, it's been with women. So I wonder if that's a factor in Brennan's issues.
Oh, ho, ho, ho. You might have caught on to something. Um, Dr. Pia tells him, like, I am being mindful. and she asked, like, was there something I said that made you think I wasn't being mindful? He says, if I were in Emily's shoes, I would get, and then she's like, but I'm like, you're not her. And then she asks Emily, like, oh, Emily, am I making you uncomfortable? She's like, no. And then she's like, listen, the only way we can move forward is if we have a frank and honest conversation. So she asks, like, okay, are you holding back to not hurt her feelings? And he's like, yeah, I'm not going to say anything that's going to hurt her feelings. So Dr. Pia tells her that Emily, that she's noticing her body language, her eye rolls, because Dr. Pia and Brennan at this point have been going back and forth, and Emily's just there like, ooh, ah. So, she says, I noticed your eye rolls, and then Brennan cuts in and is like, oh, that's just you. That's just her. And then she's asking Emily, she's like, oh, I'm asking Emily, and Brennan's like, yeah, but I want to explain. And she's like, oh, but I'm talking to her though. He's like, I know, but I have to say that. And Dr. Pia says it again, like, yes, I'm talking to her and I would like to get there. And he's like, listen, it's a lot. And I'm just trying to get Emily to take a step back. And Dr. Pia was like, but she doesn't need your help. And he's like, this is my wife. I'm just going to make sure she's okay. And Dr. Pia says, that's my job to make sure she's okay. And there was tension, there was commercials. They came back and she asked Emily, are you okay? And Emily says, I'm fine. She asks again about the eye roll. Brennan once again jumps in and is like, oh, it's a thinking face. Am I wrong? And she goes, yes, it's thinking, but it's also frustration that she will feel resentment if she doesn't hear the whole thing. Dr. Pia says to move forward, they have to have an honest conversation, and she understands how it can be pressure. She needs to know what they have been doing. She asks Brennan, what is holding back for him the physical? And he says it's just a feeling he doesn't have. She asks him what the feeling is. He says, I don't know what the feeling is. It's just not there. How do you know this feeling is not there, but you don't know what the feeling is? But okay. Dr. Pia asks, like, is this something you've experienced before? He says no. And she says, you had, this is my words, you had all the smoke for me to protect your wife. That feeling is there. Is there an emotion attached to that? He says, maybe. I don't know. I think what she was trying to ask was like, is this because of care, or is it because of like what prompted that action? He says, I don't know what the emotion is, but that's how I am when I care about people. And she's like, okay. I thought she was going to be like, oh, so you care about her. But Dr. Pia kind of knows that he's full of shit and just kind of moved on and was like, so what are your thoughts on therapy? I think the thing for me with Dr. Pia is that it's very obvious when she's been debriefed with notes, because that was clearly something that they had to address. And I don't think it came up naturally, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
The therapy
Yeah, just saying, what are your thoughts on therapy? It just
thing?
sounds like something like, I heard your conversation, like this is something that could benefit. I don't know that if they didn't talk about the therapy thing, if that will come up. I don't know. So Emily says, well, for her, they haven't had any bad experiences. And I'm like, ugh, why would you say that? Because for me, I think everybody thinks that bad experiences has to be like this deep traumatic thing. Someone died, someone did this and all that. But just Brennan's parents' marriage already is an experience. And then even for her never being in a relationship at her age is as a result of something. Like there's just always something tied to something, that for her to just give this big blanket of, oh, we've just never had any bad experiences. Like we said, I think few episodes before, like therapy doesn't hurt. Whether it's a tune up, whether it's a thing, like it just doesn't hurt. So you don't have to have bad experience to do that. Brennan, and then she says, Brennan, what about you? Brennan's like, have I done it? Or are you asking, what do I think about it? I'm like, She says, I think you should do individual therapy to be able to identify your emotions. And he's like, huh? Like, I don't think so. Like, I do a lot of self reflection. I have a good support system. I don't think like it's a barrier to my relationship. And I'm not talking because I have no emotions. And I think he knows what he's thinking, even though he's saying that he doesn't know what he thinks about it. And I think he's just regulating himself because he is on TV. But I understand where he was coming from, where it was like he felt like because I'm not saying this, all of a sudden I should go to therapy. That's what I mean by I don't necessarily think it was a natural sequence of conversation. It could have been more seamless, I think.
I think that if Dr. Pia has been watching them, first off, Brennan has. He says he has no emotions, but it's just very confusing. I think he has plenty. He doesn't want to talk about them.
Yeah.
And he's basically saying that. I have them, but I don't. And I also feel like the real question is like, why are you not operating properly in this marriage? He knows why. So Brennan is really confusing, but he is obsessed with his self image or how he's going to come off. He's terrible at expressing himself. He's terrible at communicating, from what we have seen. And Dr. Pia was just asking the questions that Emily's already asked that he hasn't answered.
I also think like I said, I think she knows she's full of shit and I like her style. Her style of I don't know, canceling or whatever you want to call it is asking these questions so that when you hear the answers, you can go from there. So I think she knows that he knows what he's feeling. He just doesn't want to say it. So she's kind of in a way calling his bluff. Like if you're saying that you have no feelings or you don't know what this feeling is, then okay, let's solve that problem and go figure out what it is. But I think he does know what it is. But yeah.
I don't like how Brennan tries to fake empathy to protect himself. You don't care about Emily.
Yeah,
You don't.
exactly. Yeah.
You just use caring about Emily to protect yourself. And Emily knows it, and Dr. Pia knows it.
Yep. That's why
That's
she
why.
was like, what was that emotion tied to that? And he's like, I don't know.
And then he tried to convince us that he's protective of his wife. Please.
Okay. We'll be right back. Okay, we're back. And Dr. Pia visits Becca and Austin. They come in, they're holding hands, they're giggly. Dr. Pia says that she's enamored by how genuine their connection is. She asks about their intimacy, and Becca says, I like making out with him, but he moves at a slow pace, so I'm respecting that. She asks him why the pace. He said he likes to have an emotional connection. And I've said this before, I just feel like he's hiding something big. And Dr. Pia asks if Becca has expressed her needs, and she goes, "Yes, that if it were up to her, that they'll have sex." And Austin just says, like, "Yeah, like he's used to it, that it has bothered his girlfriends in the past." Then I thought, is he one of those? At first, I thought he was waiting for marriage, but I'm like, if he was a virgin, he would have said that. But then also, he's married, so what was the thing that bothered them was like how long did he wait in a relation, like why did he get into a relationship with people? Okay, let me take a step back. Here they just got to know each other, got it. People that were his girlfriends, he knew them. So by the time they became your girlfriend, at that point, if it assuming that he was having sex with them, what was the thing they had to wait for or that he was slowing the pace? Wouldn't he have done all that before they became a girlfriend?
You're right. Yeah.
So I'm still lost on the things that had bothered the girlfriends in the past that I wish Dr. Pia had asked. So what was that? How did you get past it? How long did it take? And things like that. So Dr. Pia asks if it's okay to do other things that's not intercourse. And he's like, yeah. And Becca seems so surprised. She's like, oh, that's news to me. And then Dr. Pia says, so what is safe to try? I'm like, what? Are they supposed to go into detail, like, as to what are the things that they're going to do? Like, So he says, like, I feel like those things will happen more in the moment. And she's like, okay, I encourage you to talk about it. Know what your boundaries are. Talking could be foreplay. And he's like, and then Austin kisses Becca's hand. He's like, yeah, we don't need to turn her on anymore. Um,
That
there's
wasn't
such
good.
an, yeah. There's such an enigma to me because they are very touchy feely. They really seem to enjoy each other's company, and he lets her be her. But then I just also remembered that another comment that Austin makes is there's some things that I need to work out. And I'm just over the whole vagueness of everything. And it's making me do mental gymnastics, as Lauren said. What could it be?
Is it? Because I think the whole thing about Becca and Austin is that they're hiding a lot of stuff. So do
Mm.
you think that there's a situation where she knows more than we know because he's being more honest with her off
Oh,
camera?
that's a possibility. Because, yeah, she is always like, we're doing good, we're doing good. So I don't know. But then he says, we don't want to talk about the big stuff. I don't know. I don't know. But that's a possibility, Aid. I don't want to do homework when I watch my TV. Just let me know what it is.
I think part of it is I'm like, Becca should be more upset
Yeah, but
than
she's
she
not, right?
appears to be based on his answers.
Yeah. Yeah. You're right. So, Cameron and Claire. So Cameron asked Claire. They're sitting doing the debrief. The Dr. P is gone now, and Cameron just point blank asks Claire, "Do you want me to stay?" She's like, "I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if I want you to go. I will miss you if you don't, but I don't know if it's just because I'm attached, but I don't know if it's the right attachment because I've been single for so long and now I'm getting used to having you. But then if you go, I'm like, what the hell? I thought you guys said she was a therapist. Like, for a therapist, she does not communicate directly. Cameron says, okay, but that's for you to decide. He says, because for me, I want to love you, but I don't want us to hurt each other. She kept saying, I don't know. I don't know what you want me to say. I don't want it to feel like I'm pressuring you to stay. And then Cameron kind of caught her and was like, no, like, forget about everything else. Like, you on your own, what do you want me to do? All this man was looking for is like, if you want me to stay, I will stay. But if you don't want me to, like, basically he's giving her an out and she still couldn't take it. And that just really, really pissed me off.
I do feel like he asked this question multiple times in this one episode. And I think a part of me is like, but you're not getting a different answer. She gives you the same answer every episode. I don't know what he's supposed to do with that, but I do wonder why he keeps on asking the question.
It's one of those cases, like when people are together and they know it's over, but no one wants to be the one that breaks it up. They're waiting for the other person to do it, but in this case, he gave her an out. I don't know. I don't know.
He doesn't want to
Uh,
be Orion. That's why I see it. He's like, oh, I kind of want to do what Orion did, but I don't want to be Orion.
yeah. Yeah, so when he cuts her off and was like, what do you want? She's like, you cutting me off is pissing me off. And then she says, I don't know, even more. She's like, I don't know. I don't know. So Claire tells him, like, well, the advice was not to talk about the future, that we have to be in the moment. And then Cameron is like, oh, you're right. Well, how about I sleep in the spare bedroom and see if it's something that we can maintain. And Claire is like, he doesn't want him to hate her for something. And he goes silent. And she's like, oh, like, you already hate me? She didn't say that, but that's what she was implying. Okay, so Emily and Brennan. Emily says, how did it go? That she thought the conversation was moving in the right direction. I'm like, huh? Were you there? Did you see what happened? Brennan says, like, yeah, I just don't know why she kept harping on my emotions and he doesn't understand where it's coming from. I'm like, again, were you there? Because you said you had none. She says, like, I think she was trying to understand what your feelings were, that he has feelings, he just doesn't know what they are. He said that, you just wanted, that Dr. Pia just wanted him to disclose, like, he had feelings for her, but he just doesn't have them, and he doesn't need therapy to explain why it's not there. um Emily says, I think you have more feelings. And he was like, for you or in general? I'm like, oh, relax, Brennan. She's like, in general. And then he got frustrated about that and it's like, what are you talking about? Because like, you haven't brought up any topics to discuss. I'm like, wait, did I miss something? Like, what is going on? She says she doesn't understand why this has escalated and she should be the one upset. I think he made dinner for them and I think she got so upset and she threw it in the trash. I don't know if she finished it, but I just thought, like, I thought she threw it away in the trash, like she lost her appetite. And she's like, I thought everything went good. And he's like, yeah, yeah, there's a disconnect there. I don't think everything went well. He says it's just not a good feeling when someone tells you that you have to go to therapy. I'm just like, Brennan, if ever there was a case, it is you, darling. You gotta go. He says, I understand how you feel like I need therapy, but it's not going to happen. Keisha does ask him about this, and he's like, yeah, like he supports therapy and it's great, but that he didn't say anything like of not feel oh sorry. That the reason was just like at the time he just wasn't feeling a spark with Emily. And Keisha was like, but you didn't say that. And then he does admit, like, looking back, like he thinks that he's saying something, but it's not what he's saying. And that could have solved a whole bunch of stuff. And Lauren backs her up. I was like, yeah, like everything you just said right now, you made sense. But in that scene, I had no idea what you were talking about. I think you tell me, Aid, if you think this is the truth, that he finally shared the things that were his turnoffs about Emily, the things that were coming out about her getting ghosted, saying that she loves one night stands and she loves to party, that those were all things that he was kind of concerned about. Like, if you're 30 and you still want to do these things, like, are you sure you're ready to get married? And he wasn't trying to change anyone. And then Keisha's like, yeah, but if she doesn't know that, you don't give her an opportunity to change if she wants to. So, what do you think?
I think I was so excited to hear Brennan tell us finally what the problem is that I took it at face value, which was not bright of me. And now I'm like, was he just looking for a defensible answer? I mean, he's had months and months to come up with one, and so this is what he thinks is defensible. But if that's your answer, as Keisha said, none of those things are things that she can't change if she wants to. So
As
if she doesn't want to have one night stands anymore, if she doesn't want to party anymore, or if she wants to, why are you not asking her if these are the things that are such a deal breaker to you?
as agreeable as Emily has been this whole time,
Mm-hmm.
it just sounds like an excuse. But also, if you really, really like her, be an adult and have a conversation like, hey, I'm not gonna lie to you, I'm a little uneasy about this, these things that you mentioned. Like, have you really given it up, or are these things that you still want to do? And then he's been talking about trust in the process the whole time, and then we'll give it a shot and then give her a chance to prove that it's not. So personally, I didn't believe the reasons. So there was that. So Becca and Austin are doing their debrief, and Austin asked if she was surprised that he was open to doing more. And she's like, yeah, that she was surprised. And then they laugh about it, and then they say they were going to go to bed and kiss more and all that. The thing is, if he's open to more, why haven't they just done it versus having to talk about it, then go do it? Because they're pretty comfortable with each other. We know she wants to do it. We know she's following his lead. So if you want to do it the way I know that chemistry and, you know, body works, just do it. Like, I don't get talking about it before doing it. To say it's okay, let's do it.
Do you think he admitted it under duress?
He
Like Dr. Pia is forcing me to give
did.
more than I had originally intended, but sure, if it makes her happy for me to say it.
But that's why I call them an enigma, because just watching them together in this scene, he seemed pretty open to doing the more, maybe everything but I don't know. I cannot decipher these people. So they kiss and they go to bed, and the episode ends, and we get a mid-season trailer, because if you guys remember, next week is going to be Journey So Far. We are not covering it, and we get to see, I'm not crazy, we get to see Michael being asked again if he would like to get married by Dr. Pepper.
I
um
I thought it was interesting that in the preview, this is not a solo conversation between Dr. Pepper and Michael.
yeah,
There are some friends and or family there for support.
yeah. And then I guess, no, I guess the spoilers are, I was gonna say there's a possibility he could say, no, I don't want to go through this again. So, but I don't know. um All I noticed, Aid, you mentioned Lauren and Orion not being on decision day. Emily and Brennan are not there.
Oh,
Yes.
in my
I
mind,
re-
I remembered them being there.
okay, this clip that they showed today, I went to rewind again. There was no Emily and Brennan. So it was a lot of Becca staring, Cameron and Claire, and I did not see Emily and Brennan.
I have to say, I would be very glad to have Emily put out of her misery. I don't want her around this man anymore.
Yeah.
Around this man anymore. So yeah, I don't. That's fine by me. And we'll just see what happens with
Yep.
Michael. This
Okay.
show certainly needs a Hail Mary.
If ever. Okay. So Aid, who has your bouquet this week?
My bouquet goes to Lauren because she came back to. I don't like to overuse these expressions, but how can you subtly and ably read someone for filth? And it was very funny to see. And I was actually the part that made me happiest was her acknowledging that she apologized, that he did her dirty, and she ended up apologizing for it. And I'm glad to see that she recognized that, and I would say retracted the apology. So, who has your bouquet this week?
My bouquet goes to Cameron. My bouquet goes to Cameron for being very direct. I appreciate people who are direct or who communicate very directly. It's a matter of like, hey, this is how I feel about this. Hey, do you want to be in this or not? Hey, I'm not going to go crazy. I'm putting Cameron first. He was just very direct about everything, and I just really appreciated that. Who has your ashes?
It's very hard to pick. My ashes are gonna go to Becca and Austin. This grand plan to never talk about anything important is really starting to bother me. I think for me, I just need to know if you guys are gonna be okay. And the longer you have made this decision to put stuff off, the more I'm like, I don't think so. So for my own personal reasons, it's gonna be Becca and Austin. Who has your burnt ashes?
My burnt ashes go to Claire for the exact opposite reason of Cameron. Like, don't appreciate. I don't know. Well, ooh, well, I don't want to engage in behavior that involves sexual nature. Mm-mm. All that beating around the bush. That's why she gets my ashes. One last question, Becca and Austin. Do you think it's editing?
Maybe to make it seem worse than it is.
Yeah.
Maybe, but I think the part where I was like, oh no, they really are running around telling everybody we're not talking about everything important is when the other couples are talking about how Becca and Austin have decided to not talk about anything important.
Okay.
You can find us on Instagram and Twitter at AltarCallMAFS. That's AALTARCALLMAFS. We love hearing from you guys on social media.
We appreciate you listening to us. Please give us a 5-star rating if you're so inclined on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. We wish you guys a happy holidays. We will be back after next week, and we hope you have a good holiday.
Merry Christmas to those who celebrate, and Happy New Year to everybody.
Yes. Bye, guys.